In Season 2 of The Rings of Power, Sauron makes a very different appearance, which sets up a significant story from J.R.R. Tolkien's mythology. After months of conjecture regarding the identity of Sauron in Amazon's Middle-earth television series, Charlie Vickers' Halbrand was unveiled as the renowned Dark Lord of the Rings in The Rings of Power Season 1. Since Morgoth's defeat at the end of the First Age, Sauron had vanished from view, leading many to believe that he had vanished forever. Unfortunately, Sauron reappeared in full, posing as a mortal man who claimed the Southlands. The Southlands will be ruled by Halbrand, but not by him. After a personal rebranding, Charlie Vickers' Sauron makes a comeback to the cast of Amazon's The Rings of Power in Season 2. The enemy resumes his Halbrand disguise from the beginning, carrying over from the events of Season 1. But Sauron has two pointed ears, flowing golden hair that even Legolas would envy, and royal new attire throughout the majority of Season 2. Tolkien's Second Age timeline offers a canonical explanation for why Sauron's style in The Rings of Power Season 2 differs greatly from Halbrand's rough aesthetic. Sauron is disguising himself as an Annatar in Season 2 of Rings of Power. In Season 2 of Rings of Power, the true Lord of Gifts makes an appearance. As a messenger of the Valar, Sauron poses as Annatar in J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth legendarium, tricking the elves into creating the Rings of Power. Instead, Sauron infiltrated Eregion as Halbrand in the Rings of Power Season 1 remix of this story. However, he was only able to obtain 3 rings that way. Tolkien called Annatar a lovely, fair disguise. Sauron, the slick, blonde, angelic character from the Rings of Power Season 2, certainly matches the description. Therefore, Sauron's complete transformation from Halbrand to Annatar, disguising himself as a Valar emissary rather than a mortal, is solely responsible for the stark difference in appearance. Because the Dark Lord had the natural capacity to shapeshift until the end of Middle-earth's Second Age, Sauron's abrupt transformation is plausible. Eru, the god of the universe of the Lord of the Rings, will eventually take away this power, but as of this writing, the Rings of Power have not yet received their punishment. After Morgoth's fall, Sauron's full strength probably still hasn't returned, but in the Rings of Power, the villain has enough power to change his appearance and invade Eregion, allowing the crafting of the final Rings of Power. Sauron as Annatar establishes the real theme of the Rings of Power at last. The Rings of Power are reaching the Rings of Power. Sauron's objective in taking on the persona of Annatar is to complete the mission he began when the 3 elf rings were produced in the Rings of Power Season 1. There were still 9 rings for mortal men and 7 for dwarves to be made, but Celebrimbor already knew to be on the lookout for Sauron in his Halbrand form. Sauron can only force Celebrimbor to cook up additional rings by putting on a new front. By breaking off contact with Eregion and then confessing to Celebrimbor that he is not really Halbrand, Sauron manages to pull this off. Sauron, however, pretends to be a messenger from the Valar sent to save Middle-earth rather than disclosing the reality. Celebrimbor can dismiss Galadriel's concerns about Halbrand since this half-truth is credible enough, and the godlike metamorphosis that occurs in front of Celebrimbor further establishes Annatar's divine status. Celebrimbor is easily misled in this situation, but only because he knows deep down that this mystery stranger can assist him in creating a timeless artifact that would live on in Middle-earth history. Of course, the ultimate goal of Sauron's scheme is to return covertly to Mordor and forge the One Ring, subduing the desires of the other Rings of Power. The Lord of the Rings' fabled gold trinket could make its debut in Season 2, the surprising finale that sets up Season 3 of the Rings of Power, since Season 2 covers Sauron's transformation into Annatar. This suggests that the birth of the One Ring cannot be far off. Is it legal for the Rings of Power Season 2 to adapt Annatar? The legal status of Middle-earth is even more complicated than its legend initially. It was unclear if Amazon's The Rings of Power had the legal authority to adapt Annatar for Season 2. The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, with their appendices, were the only books the Rings of Power could draw from for Season 1. While there are many Second Age events in these works, Sauron could not have gone by that name in the Rings of Power Season 2 since the name Annatar does not occur in The Lord of the Rings. However, there are enough allusions to Sauron tricking the elves in the source material that Amazon has access to reconstruct a portion of Tolkien's Anadr tale. Furthermore, according to a report via Fellowship Offens, Amazon was granted authorization to modify parts of the Tolkien mythology outside of the Lord of the Rings appendices. Even though the report only mentioned how this flexibility applied to the Stranger and the Astari, it might have given the Rings of Power the opportunity to bargain with Anadr for a bit more latitude. True enough, Anadr is used a lot in Season 2 of the Rings of Power.